So I have a couple slides to share with all of you about things we've been hearing so far since we last met, kind of some of the feedback and meetings we've had, and get your thoughts and ideas there. And then we'll talk about other topics that you all would like to discuss. And then we'll open up for public comment, talk about our next steps, basically planning for our next meeting, and then we'll adjourn. So any other thoughts or ideas or things you want to make sure we cover today, or questions about that agenda? You guys are just so thrilled and excited. Let's do this. Okay. All right. Very good. Okay. So why don't we, one quick thing is the approval of our past minutes, meeting minutes. I think the only comment we got was to maybe abbreviate them a little more, but I think it seemed like everybody was supportive of those minutes. Any other thoughts or comments on the meeting minutes from last time?
I just have a question. There were a lot of typos, and I wasn't going to go through and comment on those. Is that possible to have those cleaned up in the final minutes, or is that an appropriate approach?
I think
Designated.
I think what Todd had written was planning on having more abbreviated and more wrapped up minutes that are then sent out to you after this meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
And we'll make our best attempt to catch the typos and things too.
Yeah, it looked like I was talking about binging on something, and I knew that I had
Yeah. Maybe
Thank you.
maybe that was beneficial how that was used. So, all right. Do I have somebody wants to?
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay. All right. I think we heard ayes from online. Did anybody have an A? Okay. All right. You got that there, Shannon? All right. Thanks. Okay. We'll now hand it over to Peter to go through the draft edits that we had on the rules of procedure, and we'll go from there.
And that was included in the packet of material in front of you. So you can refer to that as Peter goes through them.
I'm not sure that's visible to the people online. Do we need to enlarge that? Probably. Yeah, you do.
Just a bit, if you could.
How about a lot?
I don't know.
No, it's not doing a lot.
It's not like,
Do it. There you go.
I know I have been. It's just not.
What the heck?
I don't know. You can stop the screen and then try again.
Yeah.
Stop sharing.
That's not the one. Is that what you-
There we go.
There you go.
Okay, is that better? Oh no, do I have to? All right. Be grateful you don't have my view over here. Actually, you do have my view. I'm sorry. So basically, what I have here is the edits that all of you made over the last few months. I did make a couple of changes where I made edits myself. I will point those out to you. I understand that there might be some additional feedback from the Attorney General's office as well. They are your legal counsel. I am the policy advisor for the contractor. I'm not legal counsel. Even when I sound like it up here, I'm not. Okay, so forgive my predilections, and we'll work through this. I think, okay, there's the first edit there. Number 2, Mark made that insertion. I'm gonna have to shrink it just a little.
Warren has a question for you.
Well, it's fine. What do you want me to?
Warren, do you want to ask your question at this point?
Thank you, Dan. Could I ask Allison to scroll back up the screen to, let's see, there, good. Serves as a forum to encourage and facilitate discussion between the Department of Natural Resources, other federal and state agencies. Yeah, sorry, Peter, I was wanting to make sure that you had picked up, and you have, establishment of local watershed councils, resources, and provides advice to the governor and legislature. Thank you. You've picked them up. My question's answered just by a little more dwell time on the material. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yep, it's called cut and paste. Right out of the act. So that's why it looks familiar. Okay, so Mark, we had your addition there under Roman 2, Section 1. And of course, Ricky's comment about trying to account for the seat that the governor signed for, and that's not quite taken effect yet. That'll be next month, right? So the numbers that Mark put in, that does account for that additional seat in the recently passed legislation. I personally highlighted the word 3 here. 3 years for a term was what I just put in as a starting point in the original draft. Just calling that to your attention because below we do have Corey's edits talking about ultimately 2 years as vice chair, 2 years for chair. For
same house that you left the meeting and it dropped the visual.
I didn't do it.
It
We
still
just-
says I'm sharing though. This is so goofy. Oh, my connection
It's
has
showing
been
that-
lost.
Allison lost her connection and dropped.
It kicked me off the internet.
Yeah, it was CapNet. You have a net, an Ethernet.
I have a USB-C. That's all I have.
It's now saying you're back, Allison.
Now I'm back. Okay.
Okay.
We'll just go with it.
Yeah, let me get off hard.
Okay, that'd be great. Okay, you're back. Hopefully, maybe. Nope.
No, it's still gone.
It said it's gone all day, but I've had internet all day, so I don't know what that's about.
Let's connect this. Let me go get one.
Well, can we?
So you're gonna have. Oh,
He's gonna hardwire
We could still
me in.
keep discussing
Here you go.
in the meantime.
We could. Here you
So
It's not here yet. I don't have the internet to plug in.
yeah,
yet.
but we can discuss it.
go. We can go
Here.
ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Again, just highlighted that. I'm not saying whether to change it or not. Just again highlighted because we've got the suggested changes to the chair and vice chair positions. This here, these purple changes those are your edits, Corey.
Okay.
I just cleaned this up for visual and for us working through this. So, and I think wasn't that? No, that was Mark. That one was Mark. Sorry. And that addition there under H is Mark, and that's in line with what Ricky flagged up above.
Can I have an inquiry, just real quick?
Yes, sir.
Because we can't share online, do you think it might be beneficial to move on to the next calendar item and come back to that after we're able to share?
I think
We could.
And I'm not trying to jam Peter because we want to have double the Peter.
Oh, don't worry.
Yeah.
Don't worry, Brian.
Okay. Okay.
We can meet after if you don't.
All right. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Well, now we're presenting, I think, maybe again.
I think we're dangerously close here.
Okay. But I'm just saying that it might be, if we can't, for whatever reason, I would suggest we move on to the next agenda item and then come back to this as technology permits. Thanks.
Sounds good.
So we moved on to the next item of nominated officers.
And we can't yet.
Go ahead and just turn the Wi-Fi off.
it's
I'm just kidding.
yeah, it's
Nominated Dr. Steve.
He just wants to make sure he's-
We could have Candice do her overview if that works.
That's a great idea. Let's do that.
theory. I'm
And there's
back.
room there. Todd, Candice could. If you want.
Candice, you have some slides to present as well, right? So you're trying to connect.
Thank you. So these should be coming up here. That's not what I want to do. I want to do slideshow. Okay. So just really quickly, I was on the agenda. I'm to give a water supply update and a kind of brief overview on the legislation. So this is what we're looking at these days. This is the U.S. Drought Monitor map comparing last kind of spring at this time compared to where we are this year. So as far as overall drought conditions, we are in a better place. None of our state is in exceptional drought. The tricky part, and it's hard to communicate, is because of last year, our water supply conditions are worse off than they were last year, if that makes sense. So we all recognize in this group that we're surviving this really tough time. Granted, we know our storage reservoirs are really what protect our water supply. Right now, we're currently about 58% of our statewide average for our largest reservoirs. And that's about 10% less than this time last year. This is a map of our reservoirs, and you can see the kind of orange and yellows and reds are not what we want to be seeing. We did have our reservoir storage go up slightly, and that's actually not a good sign because that means our runoff has already started. Great Salt Lake, as we know, hit record lows last year. And right now, this is a map or a chart that compares the last 3 years. So the blue in the foreground is this year. So we are below where we've been the last couple of years. And we are expecting additional elevation rise, but it probably won't be much more than a foot, is what someone from USGS who said he didn't want to guess, but he did end up guessing that they didn't anticipate it would go above a foot above its current elevation. So we'll probably see, based on the hydrology that comes into Great Salt Lake, typically there's about a 3-foot difference because of just evaporation off of the lake and uses and those type of things. So we could see new record lows this fall again, which is once again not what we want to be seeing. This was kind of a little bit of good news. This last storm cycle increased our snow water equivalent. This is statewide. So this really, this storm cycle really targeted the northern part of Utah. So this was not seen in southern Utah. But overall, we did see a jump in our snow water equivalent. The thing is that with that it peaked about 10 days earlier than 10 to 13 days. I think it was like 13 days earlier than we normally see it, which is April 1st. And it peaked in mid-March. And then we've already started our runoff period. And I didn't pull it, but in the soil moisture map, if you look at that in the figure, it shows an increase in soil moisture, which also indicates that we were having melt off, which is not what we wanted. This is a little bit hard to see, so I apologize, but this is looking at forecasted flows for each of the sub areas. And really what you can see in the reds and the orange and the yellows is that none of them are above, 70%, 80% of average in those yellow basins. All the rest are below, 60% projected runoff from April through July. So it's not what our reservoirs need. We needed that big banner year to get kind of recover from last year's drought, and that's not what we're getting. We have started the Slow the Flow campaign of, we're asking people to wait to water, and less, this is one, southern Utah, less grass equals less water. And we will work closely with the drought response team and the governor's office on how to proceed going forward. Overall, this year, for the legislative session was, as you can see, was more like paper water rights than actual wet water, because we didn't actually get the wet water that we needed, but we did see a lot of legislation passed. These were a variety of bills passed, and I'm not going to walk through each of these. In general, there were themes that came out of them, particularly because of all the attention regarding and all the drought issues. We've seen a lot of attention through the legislature for water conservation. So you can see that through the funds that were appropriated for secondary water meters, for turf buyback campaign, or turf buyback program. And then including secondary water metering grants, making those available. There was also information on, or a bill passed for capital assets of water, that really looking at how can we get a handle on our infrastructure. And this applies for those entities that come to state revolving funds or the state funds for infrastructure loans or grants. So we will be requiring those as well. One thing that does impact this group is there was the HB 263, which is Utah Watershed Council amendments, which includes added a water attorney to this body. So that names have been presented to the governor, and we're waiting to hear back from his office on who that will be. And the other kind of themes that came out of it was on Great Salt Lake and Utah Lake. So Great Salt Lake had an HB 410 was passed that required the establishment of a water trust and provided $40 million going toward purchasing or leasing water rights to get water to the lake, and some watershed enhancements or wetland enhancements. So that is pretty exciting, and that would probably be an interesting topic to maybe have on a future agenda once that gets a little farther along for you guys. The other one is HB 429, which requires the Division of Water Resources to do a Great Salt Lake integrated water assessment. And that includes getting together a bunch of stakeholders and, really trying to, how I kind of envision it is there's so much work going on Great Salt Lake that it's really kind of maybe like a basket that catches it all, identify where there's gaps and where additional research needs to be done, and then being able to really make sense of all the work that's being done, including the development of a water budget, as well as I don't have this one written down. There's like a low impact development and study that needs to be done, which I'll work closely with Kim Shelley's office on, with the Division of Water Quality and the engagement of stakeholders on this one. So that'll be a pretty big effort, about 5 years. So we are in the initial stages of that one. Utah Lake, the Utah Lake Authority Act was passed, which creates the authority to oversee Utah Lake. And then the Utah Lake Amendments, which requires some additional oversight from the legislature on how sovereign lands are kind of assigned out. The other ones that, there's just so many. I guess, do you have any questions on them? I mean, you guys are probably all very familiar with a lot of the work that was done this session. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Candice, Scott Paxman with Weaver Basin. How far along are you? Or are you accepting applications yet on the water trust? That I can't remember what that institution is being called, or that organization. But I understand that's supposed to be formed. And
yeah, it looks like Brian wants to comment on that.
Yeah, I would just say that that's actually running through Forestry, Fire, and State Lands.
That's right.
And yes, we're in the process of the application process is now open, because it started right after the bill was signed. So trying to work through that. Thanks.
And just to note as well that we are accepting applications for secondary metering grants. That is open, and you can find that on our website at water.utah.gov. And there's a link right on the front page to that, because that one does require all pressurized secondary connections to be metered by 2030. And so there's a whole lot of work to be done, but a good chunk of money, $250 million of ARPA funds have been committed to that. So pretty exciting.
Any other questions for Candice?
Anything I missed? I mean, there's a lot going on this session.
Thanks, Candice. Go to that.
That's a really good question. We'll find out.
And I believe that Warren has raised his hand.
All right. Oh, thanks, Brian. Warren, do you have another question, comment?
I do. First of all, I'll thank Dr. Steed for noticing. To Candice, a lot of what went on in the legislature this year was the big funding lift through ARPA and other means. Would really have two questions there. One is what impact is that having on your division? And second, if you were to rank the top three, big funding items that you saw this year, what would they be?
Thanks for that question, Warren. I think the big three, at least for water resources, and like I said, there was a lot of water bills, but for water resources, I would say really the secondary metering one is huge, $250 million. The other two that are of note, we did receive another $5 million for a turf buyback program. So that is looking at how can we incentivize residents to remove kind of thirsty turf for potentially more drought tolerant waterized landscaping. So we're in the process of developing that rebate program. We are looking to our partners and people who have had a lot more experience in this as far as the districts and being able to leverage their expertise and their staff and willingness, and have had many conversations with them already. So looking at how quickly we can get that program going. The funds are not available until July 1st for that one, but we are working with them to try to get that going as quickly as possible. And then the other one I would say is the Great Salt Lake assessment. $5 million was contributed or was appropriated to water resources to get that done. As anyone who's worked in Great Salt Lake issues knows, that's a big lift. There's been a lot of work done on Great Salt Lake, but really to kind of bring it all together will be a significant effort. So that those are the probably top three that I would say. And I may have missed your first question, Warren. I apologize.
Well, thank you for that prioritization. The other question was the impact on your division. Do you have staffing to handle all of this, for instance?
Yeah, so that was one great thing that with some of that, with a lot of that money, they did give us additional staff. We're able to hire 3 additional engineers and 2 contract specialists. So they did provide, the legislature provided some staff as well to help us do these things.
Good news. With discretion from the chair, would it be out of order to ask for that same? Where did funding go in Department of Ag and Food? Where did funding go to Department of Environmental Quality also? Because I believe there are big funding packages went out to both of those departments.
So I don't know that we have a representative of Ag and Food. I would add on to what Candice said on big funding priorities. The $40 million for the trust that Scott was asking about, I think is a really huge investment for Great Salt Lake. And then on ag specifically, there is $75 million total for ag optimization programs, which is managed by the Department of Ag and Food. And this morning was on a call where they've adopted a council of individuals who will review those applications And I'm really excited to see how that plays out.
Those applications are due on next Friday, right?
Please.
Due on-
Okay.
yeah, due
Great.
on the 20
Go ahead, Warren.
Well, I believe Craig Butters reported yesterday they had over 200 applications for the ag optimization. 200 applications underway, but not all of those across the finish line yet, and have actually
That's
been
correct. They have, as
submitted.
this morning, they had about 75 that were completed for about $14 million worth of asks. And we anticipate that that number will at least double by the time this ends next Friday.
Okay, thank you.
So Warren, thanks for thinking of environmental quality. Appreciate that. Just want to add, we also were benefactors of some funding, 30 million for Utah Lake, and that will be a competitive program. We're standing that up now. The funding will be available July 1st and going forward. The other thing to note from this legislative session is that we did receive the federal match required for both our drinking water and wastewater SRF loan funds that will allow us to bring in an additional $150 million into the state for necessary infrastructure and water quality improvements. So we're grateful for that appropriation and look forward to putting that money to its highest and best use. Thanks.
Thank you, Kim. That's, wow, a big year. And I'd submit to the chair that coordinating a lot of that activity should fall to this group. It's something we'd do well to keep track of. If I may speak boldly as a non-member of the of the Watershed Council.
Okay, thanks, Warren. All right, let's go ahead and go back to our rules of procedure.
Okay, we're going to try it this time with wires attached. Based on some advice I've received from the wiser people in the Langdon group.
They're over there.
Yeah. I'm going to take a different approach on these rules of order and procedure so that it's not just this sort of free floating. Oh, you can't. What? Well, why isn't it there? Are we going? Whose hands are over there? It's showing.
Yeah, don't touch it.
It's
The man behind the curtain.
Look behind the curtain.
Put your trust in Paul. He's there somewhere.
I need to stop and get back in, don't I?
Yeah, I would stop.
Oh.
See? Oh, don't do it. Yep. It's a
Where's
higher
Paul?
power.
He's behind the screen.
He's literally behind the.
Yes.
Yeah, behind this wall.
That is. My daughter was actually in Wizard of Oz last week. This is better special effects.
If Toto comes running through, I'm out of here.
They did do it with a live dog. I really fell for that dog. So I'm going to work through section by section so that when we get through a section, we've got a feel for if you're A-okay with the language there. And that way it won't be just sort of, oh, well, what do you think? So is everyone comfortable with that? So we can go back. Here we are in Roman 1, role, authority, and duties. Section 1, role, the council. A lot of this was cut and paste from the act. Any concerns, comments, objections to section 1? Okay, last chance. Section 2, authority. This is also copied from the act. Any comments, questions? I'm glad it's a touch screen, maybe. Is that better? Okay. Section 3, duties. That's also from the act. Questions, comments. Section 4, also from the act. It's the division's responsibility to staff the state Watersheds Council, the Utah Watersheds Council. Roman 2, membership. Appointment of members. This is language that Mark added. This is in line with what is in the act. It's just spelling it out so that we can read it and not have to go back and count letters of the alphabet with our hands every time. Okay, that is how I do it. Okay, comments, questions? Okay. Section 2, rights of members. One member, one vote. The ability to designate a proxy with giving 24-hour notice. That proxy designation can last for up to a year, meaning if one of you really doesn't want to be in here, you can pick someone and have them go in your place for up to a year, if that's written and submitted at least 24 hours before the meeting in which that starts. That is something that's allowed under the Act. It's not a requirement that that be something that the council does allows for. That's just an option for the council. Comments, questions, objections?
Hey, Peter, this is Marty Bushman. Back on the next section where you identified the committee consisting of up to 26 people for the council.
Yes, sir.
Does that include the new position? It does, doesn't it?
It does. Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Thought I heard say something earlier that made me think that might not have. So anyway, I just wanted to clarify. Thanks.
Yeah. Now I'm extra nervous now that I see you're there. So I'll be extra careful now, Mr. Bushman. So, okay, let's see. Rights of members. Oh, there, we discussed that. Council member terms. This is where we were when electronics started to betray us. Again, highlighted that 3-year term, with each term expiring of the designated calendar year. Those designations are down on, in the A through H. And of course, the person serves until the replacement person is appointed or you're reappointed. No limit to number of terms. And we have here on A through H, a staggering of terms as instructed in the Act, with dates just assigned sequentially. So again, I highlighted 3 because down below where it talks about officers. And so I don't know if you want a discussion there, if you want to approve it as is, if you want to go stick a pin in that one, go down, talk officers and terms and that sort of thing, or if you want to accept this as written, it's all the council's prerogative.
I'd like to put a pin in it if we could and just have the conversation, come back to it after we jump down to the next section. If
Very good.
everyone's okay with that.
Okay, we will come back. Member responsibilities. These are items we put in there just as a matter of something you can point to when you see a council member that you don't think is up to snuff. I'm sorry, I need more sleep. I need to stop amusing myself with the commentary. But that's decorum, right? And it's quite common in these rules of order and procedure that there are some that are literally dozens of pages on how people are supposed to behave. We didn't think that was necessary to go in that detail here. How to deal with vacancies. Section 5, any objections? Oh, I should go back to Section 4. Comments, questions, objections. Keep it as is. Okay. Section 5, vacancies. Comments, questions. Okay, Section 6, this is from the Act in terms of what's allowed. Comments, questions. Okay. Roman 3, officers. This was, trying to remember who, if Marcel, we've got a lot of Marcel comments here. And we also, I'm trying to remember if this is the original, no, this is not the original Section 1. Marcel, did you write this Section 1 or did you just add the comment?
No, I added Section 1 because the Act provides that we need at least one vice chair, and I thought the rules should at least give us the option of appointing additional vice chairs. And it also the Act didn't seem to prevent other the appointment of other officers. So I just thought it was worth leaving that option open. But obviously, if we're not ready to appoint any other vice chairs or officers now, we don't have to, but just leaves that option down the road.
Comments, responses? Okay.
Any discussion about having more than one vice chair?
We decide that.
Just by vote,
Yep, or just your comments?
an agenda item, we just put it on and discuss it and vote it.
That was
My understanding that the vice chair would always be someone with a V and then first name.
No, that is.
or you've got VIC actually already.
I want to have that second vice chair that will be appointed at some time in the future.
You can have a Vic chair and a vice chair, but
I want a more illustrious title than just vice chair. We got to come up with some.
That was easy.
I think whoever is in charge of buying the water should be the chair.
So I liked the question about how that would be done. Marty, do you have thoughts if we include the language here on the ability to appoint additional vice chairs, how that would be done? There's if we put the allowance here as far as how the council would go about that in terms of when they decide to have an additional vice chair.
Well, I mean, you could, I guess, identify a process here on how you would do it, or just leave it open. Should presumably be by vote the same way that you elect a chair and vice chair. Is that what you're getting at? Does there need to be more on going for a second vice chair?
Yeah, I think that was the question. Would it just be a matter of putting it on the agenda? Would a particular policy or resolution need to be adopted? I don't know. Okay,
I think that's,
sounds like that.
I think just notice stuff on the agenda.
Okay. Do we want to approve these section by section here under Roman 3, or do we want to discuss this whole section together? It feels like this one, maybe the whole one.
Let's discuss this as a
Together.
whole.
Yeah. Okay. Any other comments on that for now? In section 1? Okay. Section 2, election of officers. That first edit there, I think that was you, Corey. And then looks like we have some Marcel in there in the green.
So let me just jump in. I'll just kind of summarize some of my thoughts there. I think I brought this up the last.
You got to turn your mic on. Press the magic button.
There we go. So this is Corey. My thoughts, and I think I mentioned some of this at the last meeting, was trying to create maybe some institutional memory, some ability to have a leadership that would get established and then be able to carry on for a few years. So the thought was to have a chair and a vice chair, and then each of those serve as 2-year positions, with the chair serving and then stepping down, and have a natural progression with that vice chair stepping into that chair's role. And then I guess once that's established, then you would elect a new vice chair, and this would continue through time. I think with the broad issues that this council will face, that there's going to be some benefit to have some longevity in that position, and for those individuals to be able to provide some leadership, just would help the group and help the individuals, was my thinking. So that's kind of the premise for what I suggested here, would be to have elections every other year. Initially, we'd have some elections to get those 2 individuals established, and then they would serve for, I guess, the 2 years as a vice chair, transition into a chair. And so that was the thinking behind that.
Corey, I share your thoughts on the institutional memory and making sure that whoever's guiding the committee has that. But I wonder if we shouldn't stop with just a 2-year every year have an election. And my point of it is you wouldn't want to automatically move your chairman out every 2 years. But I totally support everything else you said about having the consistency of leadership. So that's just my thought.
Peter, this is Marty Bushman again. Just one thing is, if this progression of leadership from vice chair to chair and 2-year intervals may cause you to go back and look at the term of 3 years, which would not allow somebody who's a member on a 3-year term to really fulfill that progression.
Yeah, that was something I
And then
highlighted there earlier. So
yeah, while I'm here on this section, the election process, I have no issues with it, following Robert's rules of orders, but I would offer some advice, and that is to use the word may as opposed to shall. When you say shall, it makes it mandatory, and it sets up a basis for somebody who's dissatisfied with the results, whether from within the council or outside of it, to try to challenge it as invalid because you didn't follow some technical aspect of Robert's Rules of Order. And I've been in enough meetings and enough debates about, interpretations and things like that. So it's always been my preference is to take that one away, is just say that we may, you obviously will, but it at least doesn't set you up for, having somebody try to challenge the outcome of an election on the basis that you failed to comply with some aspect of Robert's Rules of Order.
it's the council's direction on that.
I'd say let's follow Marty's suggestion and go back from shall back to may. I think that makes good sense.
Very good. I'll make that change.
And then with regards to the 3 years, I guess that's really at the pleasure of those agencies who are putting that person in position. So there's nothing to suggest that that couldn't continue, but that does create a little bit of an inherent conflict.
I don't know that that's uncommon, though. I mean, on other types of boards where it's possible that that somebody, I mean, I know they don't add up, right? So if you're looking for some kind of unity there, it doesn't exist. But I don't know that it's uncommon for that to exist.
Which part?
But a term of 3 years, but the idea that you would serve for more. Although I guess your suggestion, Victor, was that maybe we don't have an automatic succession, and it's not necessarily a 4-year commitment.
Yeah.
It's more of a 2-year commitment that gets renewed as people get reelected. Is that
Well,
what you were arguing about?
I totally see Corey's point. Like having the vice chair take over for the chair and having that consistency. I just don't know that we want to enforce it in our rules. And as far as 2 years versus 3 years, I support the idea that we shouldn't be having an election and turnover in our leadership. This board needs to be very consistent. It needs to be very stable going forward. And so you kind of want to have that stability. So I could go either way. I'm just kind of throwing it out. Is do you want to lock yourself into that? But I also sit on a board, for example, where our chair has been chair for a very long time, and he does a reasonably good job, and nobody wants to offend him and throw him out of the chair. And so we continue to go down the road. And that is the problem with having it locked in. So I could go both ways if somebody wants to wordsmith it in a way that it makes sense. But if the idea is maybe expanding the 2-year term to a 3-year term, I think that would also maybe add to the stability. And then we just have the progression part fall in behind it. So
For the record, I think Marty was referring back when we keep throwing numbers around, the 3 years for a member's term, not officer, the member term. I want to make sure everyone understands that was a number I just put in there arbitrarily. Okay, just making sure that's understood. So,
although having maybe backtracking and double, lawyers are allowed more than one opinion, right?
Absolutely.
About the same item. It might actually make sense to have the term be 4 years instead of 3 years. That might just end up making more sense overall. I don't know what everybody else thinks about that. A member's term, Marcel, I'm talking about member's term, not a officer's term.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I might be
That's fine.
Careful.
And
Yeah.
go ahead, Mark, you were going to say something else.
No,
Oh, I was just gonna say I support that idea. I think a lot of boards we sit on, it's a 4-year term or it's a term like that.
Okay, do you want me to make that change right now? I'll go back and make that change and while I'm making that change, and I'm going to change the succession dates accordingly, if you all want to continue your officer discussion while I do that. Because you don't want to sit here and watch me try to navigate this.
Yeah.
I know it's what you want to do, Dr. Steed, since that's your title today. Yeah.
May I ask a question? I just want to confirm that in the vote for officers, we're talking about people, not the positions for which they represent, correct? And so with the terms, staggered, and I guess we just let the vacancy thing address it. We may have somebody who's voted for an officer position who may not be there when the term is renewed. So then that just gets addressed through the vacancy provision. I just wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page.
I think that makes sense, and I think it has to be the person, not the position.
So real quick, while I'm here editing the this section with the when the seats come up, do we want 2023 to be the first turnover, or do you want that pushed back a year?
I vote to push it back a year just because it'll be here before we know it.
I know I feel like it's already 20 at the rate we're
Right?
going. Any
Yeah.
other?
But does it matter that much? Ultimately, that person can be reappointed if it works,
It can,
right?
yeah.
I don't know.
Just
What about the members from the local councils?
well, that's separate.
That's
That's different.
They're for their term on the statewide council.
Yeah, that's another section below.
All right, gotcha.
Yeah. So, do you want me to stick with 2023 as the first reappointment election? Push it back?
To 24.
What's the group? 24?
I would suggest you tune all the 2023s to 2026, so you don't have to change every single one of them.
Dude.
Because I think that's where you're going to end up. If you change the first one, you're going to change the second one and change the third one, right? So I think you just change 2023 to 2026, where that number appears.
Well, but then that's going to be 7. Just keep going.
No, we can. You could probably come back and edit this later. We could.
Y'all can still talk officers. Do I have to be on the page to? Did you all decide what you wanted to do for terms and?
I have a question about so under election of officers, Article 3, Section 2 talks about the vote that the officers will be chosen from among the members by a majority vote of a quorum of the members of the council. And I don't know if Mr. Peterson has anything to say about this, but in the code, it says that the actions of the state council are taken by a majority of the council. Doesn't talk about majority of the quorum. So my question is should we take the word quorum out there and just say they're elected by a majority of
Yes.
the members? Okay, so that's on the 1, 2, 3. That's on the 4th line down in Section 2 where it says quorum.
Since you asked, Mark, I concur. I concur with the great dissenter.
You know, as I read Section 3 in regards to this idea of whether we want a 2-year term and then to be followed by the vice chair, I think Corey's arguments are starting to become more sound. I think maybe that would be a good idea, that we just leave the language as it is. It does some risk that the board will start to swing back and forth and you won't have as much consistency. But I think it'll also maybe keep everything a little more fresh as well. And so I'm fine with the overall concept of Section 3. I don't know if anybody else has thoughts on that.
I did suggest some alternative language that didn't necessarily change the meaning, and or at least that wasn't the intent. It was just to simplify the verbiage. And I don't know, we can't quite see all that, Peter.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Can I ask this, Marty, again? There was discussion just a minute ago about majorities and quorums, and I just want to make sure I understood the discussion. Is it being suggested that a vote can carry with a majority of the council or a majority of the quorum?
Marty, this is Mark Stratton. It's the majority of the council, not a majority of the quorum.
Because, you know, in
And the
looking at section 306, subsection 6 and 7, 6 says a majority of the members of the state council constitute a quorum. And 7 says the action of the majority of the council constitutes the action of the state council. And so if we're looking as the majority of the council has to vote in a particular way, it kind of makes the definition or the designation of quorum superfluous. Why is it there? And it's not well written. I agree here, but usually it seems like it's a majority of your quorum is necessary, and a quorum is a majority of the members.
It usually is. It's in the act for both the state council and local councils that actions by the council have to be by a majority of the members of the council. I think, and it also says that a majority of the council constitutes a quorum for the purpose of conducting business.
Could be even conducting any business, but if you've got a simple majority present, that constitutes a quorum. But to carry a vote, all 14, say for instance, of the majority would have to vote the same way. Is that the way it's being read and interpreted?
You know, we have a guy here that might want to, online, who might want to explain why in the world you would do something like this. Mr. Peterson.
Oh, is that, you're referring to me?
What? Yeah.
Yeah. Marty, the simple answer is because in the drafting group, I insisted that an action of the council could only be taken by a majority of the members, not by a majority of the quorum, because I've seen this blow up too many times over the years. So that it's very clear that when the quorum, or when the council votes, it's not a majority of the quorum, it's a majority of the council. And so
where you got 26 members, you need 14 to be a majority for a quorum or a simple majority. You'd have to have at least 14 votes for any particular proposed action to make carry.
Yes, Marty, adjusted, of course, for how many members you have. All of the state.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that makes some sense to me now. Sounds like things were set up a little differently here, but.
And I will say that this is Mark Stratford again. From the perspective of certain actions that municipalities take, there are frequently items that require what's called a supermajority, right? Because of this idea that you don't want just a smaller number making a decision for the big group, and so you want to make sure it's an actual majority as opposed to just whoever happens to be at the meeting. And that does, while it can be cumbersome, I think does serve a pretty important purpose, especially where we're trying to build consensus through the group rather than just whoever happens to be there. So that's what the statute says.
I'm fine with the concept of it. It was just kind of the confusion that was created, at least in the statute in my mind, by first saying a quorum's a majority, then saying any vote or any action of the board has to have a majority. But so to the extent we're striking out vote of the quorum, I agree with that then in this context. So.
Yeah, Marty, you articulated when you said you have to have a quorum to conduct business.
Right.
And that's the only purpose for the reference to the quorum.
But if you didn't have a quorum, you could never get a majority of the votes anyway. So, yeah.
Yep.
So based on the legislation, should we just simplify this and eliminate the reference to quorum and is this just a
I
simple majority?
I would.
All action be based upon both to even hold a meeting and to take any action? Is
Yes.
that what we're hearing?
I mean, the majority of the council subsumes the quorum aspect of it. I mean, you can't get a majority of the council voting one way without a quorum being present, so.
It's true.
Okay. Yeah, thumbs up right
Okay.
for that.
I'll do that. Okay. Were there more thoughts on section 2 election of officers? Oh no, we were on officer terms. If I'm reading this right, Corey, it looks like what's proposed here, and this would probably be different this first time around. What we'd be looking at is for it looks like reading section 2 and 3 together here, that we're looking at the last meeting of an odd number year. You hold elections for chair and vice chair, and that transition in section 3 happens at the start of the second quarter of the following year. So last meeting of an even year, last meeting of an odd year, you have the election, and 3 months into the new year, those changes happen. Is that correct?
Yeah, so that was just thinking so that you would make that selection at the end of the year and then the first of the following year, you'd make that change. But the thinking would be to do that in the second quarter so you get past the legislative session and out of that chaos.
Okay. It took me a minute to reading through that, so I wanted to make sure I was understanding it right and that, okay.
I do have a question about how this works though between section 2 and section 3. So if you're going to have kind of an automatic progression from vice chair to chair, are you really electing the chair every 2 years? Or are you just electing a vice chair? Right. And so in section 2, and maybe we need to say that the initial election will be a chair and a vice chair, but after that, it's really just electing a chair every second year. A vice chair every second year.
Yep.
You're not really electing a chair.
Yep, that's what we're saying.
So line 3 of section 2, I don't know if we're gonna.
Election for the vice chair.
Really, it's election for a vice chair.
Okay. Okay. I'll delete that and come up with some language for, in terms of the elections you'll be doing today. We'll just add a sentence at the beginning there. Basically, for the first time you elect officers under this section, you're electing a chair and a vice chair. I'll write that in once we're done talking through the rest of this. That's a good catch. Okay, so are we good with, I say good, but I'm just saying, should we talk about section 4? Sorry, Marcel. Oh yeah, you
I
had
had
the,
a question
I
on section
apologize.
3. I just
apologize.
wondered if the language could be simplified, because I had to read that about what was there. I still read that first sentence several times, and it just seems like it could be simplified. But maybe I'm not saying my suggestion's the right suggestion, but and if people like Mark Stratford understand what that says is written, then I guess I'll just I'll be okay.
Don't put your faith in me. If anybody who reads it should be able to understand it. So if that's an issue, we should address it.
2 is vice chair, then 2 is chair.
So Marcel, is there something specifically you would like to look at changing there or clarifying?
Well, I put some alternative language. I just wanted to be very clear about, what's the term for the officer and then when that transition takes place. And I guess we've moved to 4 years instead of 2, but
Right.
which
So you're suggesting keeping the same verbiage, but changing it from 2 years to 4 years that you have there on the side?
I'm not sure that does quite what was intended. I thought it did, but it just seems simpler.
Makes sense.
I get what you're saying.
Total 4 years.
Oh, Warren has the answer.
Warren? Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I don't. Thank you. I don't have the answer. I just have other questions. When you overlay this automatic succession and then the fact in section 1 you can have more than one vice chair, you're going to have to deal with that as well, aren't you? Are the vice chairs going to serve in succession then, if there's more than one vice chair? And also the fact that you've said it's not automatic that the chair would go away after 2 years. Someone asked what we should do for a different title for the vice chair. Maybe if we count on someone who just perpetually waits and watches but never acts, we could call the vice chair the Prince of Wales or something. But the point is, you need to make sure that math works out if you have more than one vice chair.
I would like to withdraw my name from consideration to be the King of England. If we were ocean going, you could be the King of King of Wales or something, but you'd have to spell it different. But we don't have Wales here, so sorry.
So to Warren's point, do you want to just keep it as a singular vice chair at this point, and then later on, if you want to add a second vice chair, you could revisit that discussion and do that change then. Just keep it simple for now.
I think
You might
so. I
have
think
a
that's
first second vice chair. You got to do one or the other, Dan, I think, or else your math doesn't work.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah, I actually think of just calling it a first vice chair and then additional vice chairs. I think having them in here at the beginning probably makes sense. So in section 1, it should just probably say that they'll elect a first vice chair, and then they may appoint additional vice chairs.
Yeah.
So I think that be helpful.
Corey?
I think that's fine, but then it just does kind of bring into question the officers' terms and that succession. Does that then put those officers in for 6 years if you have a second vice chair? So it seems like you either have to address that in this transition, this succession kind of paragraph, or you want to eliminate that other option of other vice chairs. So, if we want another vice chair, that could be amended later. Either way.
I think you just have to add first vice chair in section 2 as well. So serving as first vice chair for 2 years and then transitioning, if that's exactly where we're going.
Yeah, Corey, that's a good point. Another way to do it would be to just drop back to 1-year terms so that you have a rotation taking place.
Yeah, I honestly, what do you think about that, Corey? I mean, is our 1-year terms as opposed to, well, actually, I shouldn't say that. There's still a problem with 4 years. If you have an election every odd numbered year, then you're having an election every 2 years, right? Mm-hmm. And so really the vice chair first vice chair should serve for a year and then serve as chair for a year, because the next one coming along is going to be right behind there. Otherwise, you're talking about a 4-year election cycle instead of a 2-year election cycle. Peter's pondering over there.
I'm lost. I'm just waiting for y'all to tell me what to do.
So I guess I could see going either way. Either maybe a chair, a first vice chair, and a second vice chair, maybe a 1-year term in each of those positions, or just keeping it to a chair and a vice chair and 2 years in each position. I think you need some level of longevity, but maybe that gets to be a little too much if you have 3 positions and 2 years at a whack.
Yeah,
I think that's still manageable.
It seems to me if your officers serve a term of 2 years, right? So if you serve 2 years, then you have your election in every odd numbered year. That's every 2 years, but you're really just electing the first vice chair every odd numbered year, and then I don't know. I have to write this down in a chart.
So if you have 3 positions, you just elect the second vice chair, and that second vice chair moves up to the vice chair, who moves up to the chair. If you have 3 positions, right? If you just have a chair and a vice chair, then every other year you're just electing the vice chair.
Maybe I'd offer. I haven't heard anybody say that they really feel like we really need 2 vice chairs. So at this point, where you're getting up and running, maybe stick with a chair and a vice chair for now. Keep it simple. After you're in a year or 2, if you feel like it would be great to have 2 vice chairs, we can amend this and you'll have flow and some rhythm then, and it'd be easier. It's maybe just throw that out as an idea.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, and it simplifies it. And I think we need the 2-year terms. I don't think we can, 1-year term just flies by. You don't really learn anything in that position. So
that 2 years is almost cutting it too short. I mean, I don't know how often we're going to get together, I hope it is often, but I mean, in 1 year, you'd probably chair 3 or 4 meetings and you wouldn't even have a chance to kind of get settled in. So there wouldn't be any of that longevity that we're looking for.
We have a comment from the back.
From the peanut gallery, but I wouldn't tie yourself into something like that because you may have a chair that's extremely active. You might have a vice chair that's not. You may not want to have that. You might want to do the election every time. And if it be your will, then you could put the vice chair in, but you could put somebody else in. Just my 2 cents.
I've got to say, from the math perspective, it gets confusing. I do think it should be an election every odd year, and you elect both of them for a 2-year term, and then probably in section 3 not talk about an automatic transition, but the officers will serve a term of 2 years without the automatic transition.
I'll second that motion.
Corey, did you have a thought before the second happened there?
I think that's fine. I think the math is simpler than we think because every 2 years you're just electing a vice chair. And that creates the longevity, but I'm fine either way. I mean, I think the main thing is to get this thing up and going and simplify, and then we can make changes down the road as needed. I think that's where we need to be. And yeah.
I agree. So what would you like to second? Would you like to?
So I heard a motion to vote for a chair and a vice chair every 2 years, and that they would serve for 2 years.
Correct.
And I would second that motion.
That's what I said. Yeah.
Is that what I heard?
Yes.
Is that clear?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I wasn't.
So we would
My
have-
brain stopped there for a minute. Please repeat it.
Corey, give it one more shot.
I'm only good for one shot, and even that's pretty weak.
I understand. Yeah.
Okay, so every 2 years, an odd number of years, we are electing a chair and a vice chair.
Yeah.
And they would serve for 2 years.
Okay.
In that position.
Okay.
Simple.
Yep. I'll see
Or
what I
are
can
we
do.
just electing officers?
Yes.
If you really want to make it simple, just elect officers.
And if I can speak to that motion and second, ultimately, we're going to have an opportunity to revisit this and decide what works and what doesn't work. Rather than spending more time when we don't even know how frequently we're going to meet, it might be beneficial to then decide that's what we're going to do for now and assess at a later date if we decide it's not working.
Okay. So does that mean we leave the additional vice chairs if you're electing everybody the option there?
Yes.
We leave the option. Okay. I'll work on that. Are we conceptually, is there more questions? If there are more questions, then I'll need to go edit this right now while you watch. Okay. Anything else? Questions about anything from section 1 through 3? Okay. 4. We've got language here from Marcel and from Corey, section 4.
So I would just say that I was trying to, that was when we were having succession. Since we're not having succession, we could probably make that paragraph much simpler. Unless you want to have the vice chair fill I just think if make it simpler would be better.
I'm going to make the motion that we simplify.
I'll second.
Okay, do you want me to delete the entire paragraph or
No, just
say-
amend it so that it doesn't include the succession language.
Okay.
I'll
So we're
restate
just
the
going to
motion
elect a
for the
new
person
chair,
making the
right?
motion.
If a chair or vice chair steps down, we're electing the replacement.
Does that last sentence almost cover that? Should other officers, if any, be unable to complete their
Yes.
term?
I'm going to delete everything else
Election.
and I might add 2 words to that last sentence. Great. Okay.
Okay, great.
Does anyone want to write a paragraph on removal?
I'm going to withdraw that suggestion. That was mine. It was just a question. If that's okay. I think
Section
the
5, you
governor
mean?
can remove.
I'll second that. Thank you, Marcel.
Well, this would be removal of an officer, not of,
Oh, that's right. Sorry.
none of you can remove another member,
You know, there.
at least from the council.
I don't know.
I mean,
Typically, board bylaws have a removal provision, but I don't think it's critical here.
if you're going to do it, I suggest doing it now while you all still like each other. To get really awkward later.
Be like Survivor. We just vote them off by.
Are we passing on that? Very good. Okay. That really didn't change in section 3A or B. I think who was it that asked that be deleted? I deleted it. Someone else wanted that deleted. Oh, I might have just decided. Didn't someone want that deleted?
It was
Great, it's gone.
I think it's because the word policy is a.
Yeah, probably. We do have Chair Pro Tem. Chair may select a board member to act as presiding officer, or the members elect one. Is that okay? Great. Meetings of members. Do we need section 1 anymore?
Well, it should just say what it originally said. A quorum shall consist of a majority of the members of the council.
Okay.
I don't think we should be trying to figure out numbers when we don't know how many people are actually on the board at any one time.
Great. I'll change that back. Anything else there under Roman 4? Okay. I did add under section 5 regular meetings, I did add tinker with the language for creation of an agenda. Looking at some other provisions, there was a question, who's in charge of making the agenda? I didn't completely like the language that was there. So I thought the idea of, rather than the division consulting with the chair and soliciting items from members, to say instead, division creates it under the direction of the chair and members can put things on the agenda.
I second that.
Great. We got a nod from Corey and words from Mark, and that makes me feel good. Anybody else?
Keep going while you feel good, buddy.
Great, we're good. Okay. We have here, we have Marcel adding include the following or others. It's up to you whether you want this list to be exclusive or just a good starting suggestion list. We also have, I believe, is that you, Ricky, asking about whether we want tribal liaisons. I've got your name in the little pop-up box. Probably, yes. There we go. There we go. Okay, so the question first is whether that list of A through J should be exclusive, that those are the federal agencies invited. Over here in the comments on the edge, you see that Marcel said that there may be others that you want in at some point. And then that's question 1. So let's start with that.
Bigger sense is always better, I guess. Leave the option open. So I'm in favor of it.
Agreed. Okay. And I guess that in some way ties into, no, but that says federal agencies. The tribal question.
What if you just said federal or tribal agencies and you don't make it an exclusive list?
Yeah.
Great. Okay.
Yep.
I'll do that. Okay.
Brilliant idea.
Make that change. Okay. Subcommittees, that is language from the act as well. Concerns, questions? Okay. Procedures, any issues there? Great. And no amendments. I did create a separate resolution to adopt these rules of procedure. That's, I can share that. I'm not going to, it just says that you adopted on this day. So that's what you'll sign once you approve. I might be speaking out of turn here, and a lot might do with what Marty's comfortable with. I think you all know what you've agreed to. There might be a few words that need to be tinkered with. but we agreed in content and almost every single individual word. Are you comfortable with approving it, knowing that I have to go type those things? Marty, are you comfortable with it being approved and adopted at this moment? And do you feel like that's requisite to the council moving ahead and electing their officers?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that. I think you'd have a motion to approve it or to approve them as modified and agreed upon. And those will all be reflected in the minutes. So
I'd like to make that motion.
Okay.
Mr. Bushman just stated.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. Everyone understand the motion before them? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Hold on one second. Before you, Ken had his hand
Oh,
up. Before we do the opposed.
Uh-oh.
No, that was just me voting in support.
Okay.
See, there needs to be one of those buttons, an I button on, okay, great.
Any opposed?
None opposed. And can we make sure we have a list of who was in attendance that, we have an
You got that.
attendance list? Okay, very good.
Peter,
Okay.
Peter, this is Marty.
Yes.
Was that vote on approving the rules or on approving the resolution?
I thought it was the bylaws that we just.
It was 100% the rules.
It was the rules.
Yeah, as
Probably not a vote on the
modified.
resolution since it's a separate. I mean, the rules are part of it, but it's a separate document too.
Okay, looks like we need a motion to approve. Let me pull up the resolution for you if you're going to be, because it's really not good form to vote on something you have not read.
What are you talking about? That's how we run this country.
Yeah, you're. It's true. Right? It's completely true. Yeah, gotta share. Oh, damn it! Will you please do that?
Sorry.
No, you're fine. Oh, you're apologizing to that.
No.
Yep. Okay, I'm gonna zoom that in for y'all if the magic works. Wizard? Thank you.
Calling
Okay.
my name.
Mhm. Okay, this is the language of the resolution. Are any of you online using a phone and cannot, do I need to read it out loud? This is an Independence Hall out on the steps or something.
I would make a motion that we adopt the resolution.
This is Corey. I second that.
Very good. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, any opposed? Okay. Marty, are we good?
Sorry, we are good.
Okay, before we jump into election of officers, do you guys want to take a quick break before we do that? Or do you want to do the election of officers and then take a break?
It's 2:30.
Let's keep going. Keep going? Okay. Okay, so for election of officers, we don't have a formal process for this outlined for you. So this is for you to decide how you would like to go about doing that.
What do Robert's rules say? I don't really need to know, but do we just need nominations?
Yeah, we need nominations.
And I'm going to take a first stab at this and nominate. Jeez. Peter, that's awesome.
I'm here for it.
Yeah. I'm going to nominate Corey Graham. And if I can speak to that. Corey has served in the water world for a number of years. He has the utmost respect of all those that deal with him. He's also served on other boards, including the State Parks Board, and has done an exceptional job there. And so just want to say that he would be excellent for the initial chair. Thanks.
And I will second that nomination.
Corey, do you have any?
I would welcome any other nominations.
I would move that we close nominations.
Second.
Okay.
Does anybody online have any thoughts about a chair, about Corey?
I'm good. Yeah, let's talk about Corey.
All right, let's talk about
Yeah, well.
Well, we did allow
about.
a small amount of opining about it. Okay, so then, if Corey, if you don't have any objections to that yourself, all right, all those in favor of Corey being their first chair of the Watershed Council?
Oh, yeah.
Is there a formal mechanism to vote? Could we say aye?
Aye. Any nay?
Aye.
All right, anybody have a nay? Nope, okay.
And if I may speak to that as well, I'm really sorry, Corey.
But not that sorry.
But I do, no, seriously, I've been super impressed by watching you work. And so congratulations.
So do we want to go into having our first vice chair as well then?
I think he can run it.
Yep, Corey, yeah, the ball is yours.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. So let's move into nominations for our first vice chair. So I'd accept any nominations at this point, people in the room and those members online.
Well, I'd like to nominate Dr. Steed to be vice chair. I know he's extremely busy, but when he can make it here, it'd be great to have his input on this board.
I appreciate that. And for my sake, I nominate Scott Paxman.
It's all like closed nomination.
All right, we've got two nominations, one and a quick handoff of the ball.
Well, I'm going to withdraw mine because I'm sure nobody's going to second. Okay, and I would like to second Scott Paxman's nomination.
Okay, so we've got a nomination, a second. Any other nominations? Okay, in the absence of that, I will accept, I guess, let's take a vote on Scott. All those in favor, say aye.
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 And any opposed? Okay, Mr. Vice Chair Scott, glad to have you on board. All right, thank you.
May I offer a comment, Mr. Chair?
Very quickly, thank you.
There is a support group for people that are volunteered to positions by Brian Steed. I thought you'd want to be aware.
Appreciate that. First step is to recognize you have a problem. Right? A bunch of them in the room. All right. I guess we'll move on to our agenda. Did we approve our past meeting minutes?
We did.
We did. Okay, thank you. Let's move on to an update from Dan, formation of local councils. If you could kind of tell us where we're at with some of these. I guess you're looking at 4 local councils: Bear River, Weber, Jordan, and the Sevier.
Yep. Screen share here real quick. Okay. Go ahead. Actually, let's go ahead and move through. Just actually go back one more, just to make sure everybody's on the same page, that we have the 11 local watershed councils with what I refer to as the hybrid 12th, that is made up of the 5 that flow into the Great Salt Lake. And just make sure everybody's on the same page, knowing that that's one of the things that we've been working on really aggressively, is now that this council's up and running, to form those 11 local or the 12 local watershed councils. And then you can go ahead and skip through that. Go ahead and skip through actually, no, go back one. Okay, and then, so the thought here is that this body is going to certify the local watershed councils. I think that still maybe needs to be determined a little bit about what does certify mean. But what we wanted to draw your attention to is, what are those seats that are on the local watershed councils? So there is 11 seats representing ag, industry, tribes, public water suppliers, water planning and research institutions, water quality, fish and wildlife, water dependent habitat and environments, watershed management, mutual irrigation companies, and local sponsors of reclamation projects. But the thing that we have communicated to everybody that we have been meeting with is that if they want to have other seats on their watershed council that it is up to them to determine how they want to structure and form as a local watershed council. So examples of that have been maybe like in a place where, like with Moab, with white water rafting, should you have a chair or a seat that would be there for recreation or whatever it might be. So, but those are the 11 formal seats that are recommended in the act. Okay. Also, just there is, if you look in the act, there is verbiage in there that does highlight and talk more about the local watershed councils and their roles. One of the things I wanted to point out here is that last bullet about the connection with Colorado River Basin, the Colorado River Authority, and now with the Utah Lake Authority as well, that those would be two other bodies to coordinate with. I also point out that Cody is here and is working with the Colorado River Authority, and that is part of his job, is to help convene the councils and committees that will be working with the authority. So we can also grab Cody for questions there. Go ahead. So there's the 5 that are the potential candidates kind of jumped out are the Bear River, Jordan River, Sevier, Weber, and the Uinta Basin. What kind of has brought these 5 has been that a lot of folks in those have asked to form and get going. Let me just walk through those briefly. So the Bear River, I was able to meet with the TAC for the Bear River Commission a week ago, and we do have a meeting set up with Candice and Todd and myself and several representatives from the Bear River Commission to learn and understand a little more where they're coming from. From a local leadership standpoint, with Bragg and with other folks in the Bear River area, there's a ton of desire to get going. I also think it's a good example of a council that has a ton of ag-urban conversion taking place, and it has the Bear River having a system that's not only running to Salt Lake, but it goes through multiple states and would involve a lot broader coordination. So I think there's a lot we could learn by standing that one up. The Jordan River Commission is really interested in becoming certified and becoming the Watershed Council. So that is another kind of unique thing that's popping up a lot right now, is existing organizations wanting to know if they can just become the Watershed Council. Also, some are saying we absolutely do not want to become the Watershed Council. So there's 2 extremes of that I'm seeing. The Sevier River, what I like about the Sevier is that it's a water systems all contained within that one watershed. And it also has a strong arid ag element to it. And they also there's a watershed council there that's been convening for about 100 years. So they've been doing it for a while. The Weber River, this one has actually had probably maybe the most movement in the last couple months. The Weber River, I presented to the Summit County Commission here about 3 weeks ago. It turns out that they have hired a woman named Jess Kirby that is worked there for the last 2 years, and she has been basically forming everything that we would do with the Watershed Council, including going out and fundraising. She's raised about $4.5 million. So Jess was a little bit nervous, saying, hey, is this council is it duplicate effort? Is it gonna replace what she is doing? And so we've had really good conversations with Jess that absolutely not. We want her and all of her effort and energy to be part of that local watershed council. There's no one intending to replace her or what she's doing with this effort. But another good example is that Jess is also working with Weber Basin and with the Forest Service on shared stewardship, and have funded and are doing some really important work on the headwaters of the Weber River. And the Weber River also is a great example of a trans-basin system with how much water goes from the Weber to the Provo. And so it's a good example of some of these watershed councils where we're going to have a lot of coordination between councils because of critical trans-basin systems. There's also a fair amount of feedback coming from the Weber River Partnership. They went ahead and formed a 501 and became a 501c3 instead. And there's some nervousness about becoming a watershed council because they want to be able to fundraise and get money to do projects. But one of the things Warren had pointed out is that there's nothing that precludes a local watershed council from becoming a 501c3. And in Oregon, it's really interesting. I had another visit with colleagues there, and a number of watershed councils there have actually combined and have become 501c3s in order to get funding to do projects. And their last legislative session, they combined their efforts of the watershed councils with the Forest Service, went to the legislature and got $6.5 million to do watershed council projects. So that maybe is another example. And then the last one, the Uinta Basin Water Quality has been doing a lot of great work there. Christina Osborne has been starting a watershed council like group there, and she's done a great job, and they've made a lot of headway. So there's some interest there. Also, the tribe did meet with the governor and had a really successful meeting about making headway on tackling things, including water projects. So that was the Ute tribe. That was a good meeting. Okay. Actually, before we go off that, any questions for me about any of those?
So if any or all of these move forward, is the expectation that they will do work and come to us, or is the expectation that we reach out to them in some way?
I think the expectation is that they will meet as a watershed council. In fact, this is something we need to talk about too. So I've been asking folks in each of these watershed councils, what, from a procedural standpoint, what would they like to do? How do they see this playing out for convening their local council? And the feedback from just about everywhere has been to do a very inclusive invite for anybody that wants to come and talk about watershed councils in that council area, and walk through the act with that group, let them know about the statewide watershed council being convened, and then show the 11 seats that I shared up here, and then ask them how they would like to convene. Let a large group kind of weigh in and decide where they would like to go. So and then once they were to, come together and go through fulfill those initial seats, they would then come to this council and share what, that they want to be certified and where they're at as a council.
And Dan, talk a little bit about scale. I mean, look at the Weber River, and that's a big basin. Even the Sevier is very big, and it has varied interests along the way, water right issues, top and bottom, and just different demographics. And, I guess in that we say a local basin, there needs to be opportunity for all those different sub-watershed groups, or, I mean, you could have all kinds of representation, right, that would work as a local group and function, right? That's what we're saying.
Yeah, that scalability it's huge. So if you look at just the West Colorado River Council, when I met with the counties on the north end, they just talked about how their water comes from the same place, what they grow is the same, culturally they're the same. But then when they talked about on the southern end, like near Arizona, they're like, we don't even know those people. We don't know what they do. So that sentiment came up a lot. The Utah Lake Watershed Council is another good example where you have an existing Provo River Watershed Council that water quality convened. They've met for about 30 years. They enjoy each other. They get a lot done. They have, some concerns about all of a sudden becoming part of Utah Lake's challenges and issues. And then also the two counties that are on the southern end of that. So you almost have three distinct separate groups. So as I've met with those folks, they all say, yeah, we probably could benefit from additional coordination, but we really like what we've got going right now. And so that is an idea that has been pitched a number of times, is what if you had within each of those local watershed councils, sub-basin watershed councils that maybe would meet? So that is something that still needs to be determined. And any thoughts and ideas on that, I would love.
Yeah, I guess my thought is that if you got something good, you want to build on it, but you not to the exclusion of where maybe something isn't happening.
Right.
And I want to point to Kim a little bit. Is you got a lot of good things going on the ground with TMDLs and watershed assessments and with your folks. And I've worked for a lot of years with Amy Dickey, and she's been great down our way, by the way. And you know, they've done a lot of, Kim's folks have done a lot of on the ground work with grants and watershed improvement, and that's kind of created some of these smaller groups with good things going on. Would you maybe say a few things? Do you mind?
Not at all, but I'm recognizing that I don't have a full understanding of the breadth of the effectiveness, but I know those are issues that were raised, especially by our staff. There are a lot of good things happening in the margins, I guess. We want to make sure that those are captured. And yeah, we do have a regulatory process through the TMDL process, but as we convene people with those groups, we're finding that folks are finding ways outside of the regulatory process to do a lot of great things. So yeah, Corey, thanks for the recognition. I will give Amy a high five when I get back to the office, but well, she's not, right? I could tower over her. But yeah, I think that's really important to make sure that we're providing opportunities for those things to continue to happen. So.
Maybe you and I are in the same way, but we are sitting by each other. I'll just say real quick, Scott gave a great example when I had visited with him early on in the process of where they had, the Weaver River had a TMDL working group that was diverse. It was very collaborative. They got things done. And the group actually, I think, never formally disbanded, right, Scott? But this kind of like what Kim's talking about, that there's a lot of these that formed around TMDL. Some of them have continued to meet because they like each other and they're getting things done. And others maybe quit meeting just because they ran out of TMDL things. So that, I think that's one of the important themes I want to point out, is just that each one of these local councils are going to have unique different things, and that it'll be important to help each one of them to keep it fresh with what are those new things they can tackle and work on. And that being able to be funded or have resources or whatever to actually be able to point to things that they have gotten done is also critical to the long-term success of the local watershed councils in the lessons learned part of it. Anyway, sorry, go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, that's great introduction, because the TMDLs was a great initiative to get us all together. And as long as we were working on it, and as long as we had things to talk about, it was awesome. But once that got concluded, you know, we would continue to meet and basically just update each other on who was doing what in the watershed, which was great until it wasn't, until everybody was kind of tired of meeting. And so just the idea that you've got to have some reason to meet. You can't just meet, especially that big of a group, each quarter, even once a year, if there's really not a reason to meet. So just to comment on the sub watershed groups, I don't anticipate they would need to be organized in nearly that same fashion. Just like our East Canyon water quality group, it's, for the most part, it's an informal group, but they are very consistent and work and meet together each quarter and have a lot of things going on stream restoration and different things like that. So, and I see things like that happening in Chalk Creek and, you know, some of these other drainages that these smaller groups can get together informally and do great things and maybe report to the council, the local council, on what they're doing. But yeah, just wanted to make sure that we weren't intending that the subgroups have to be as organized.
Do you have a comment? No, just you have a comment?
Yeah. Well, just I would add to Mark's question originally. All of the councils will have a member that serves on this council, so they will all be here. So, anyways, yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, go Allison to the.
I think Peter's going to lead us in karaoke.
It was a matter of time till he snapped. There, just a couple recent efforts to make sure everybody is aware of. So, water users, Todd Stonley and I presented. It was well attended and a lot of great comments. The the cat's out of the bag. So I think this is kind of the thing is some of the feedback we got from folks there is, hey, my group now wants to talk shop. Like so. There's the energy is definitely going on these. I talked about Summit County and Jess Kirby. Also, this part about Weber River partnership. So I am reaching out to those folks and plan to meet with them as soon as I can. Their leadership. Paul Burnett was leading that and has now gone to work at the state. So I can report back on that as I learn more there. Also, I mentioned that we had the Bear River Basin Water Quality Task Force and that I presented to them about a week or so ago. And then we have a follow-up meeting, Candice and Todd and Rachel and I do. And then also I met with Conley from Pacific Core, and he's been great. And they're, especially in the Bear River, would be a great partner in that effort there with all the work they do there. So, yeah, right. Okay, Todd.
And just a quick comment, just so the council members know, we have retained the Langdon Group to help us through the next 4 years to help implement the local watershed councils. So we're going to work them hard and get as many of those formed as are willing to do so. But that's kind of our timeline for those. And our goal is at least 2, maybe 3 or 4 this year, if there's willing councils to be people to come forward.
Yeah. Go ahead. So just a couple of the things that.
Sorry, can you go back? What was the Rocky Mountain Power?
Oh,
there?
Just that I met with them. They also came to Utah Water Users, and we visited more there. Conley, what's Conley's last name? We have, he's fantastic, really great to work with. Also, Pacific Core has local area coordinators. I'm not remembering the right term for them, but they also throughout the state of Utah have staff that's their job is to work in convening and bringing people together. So another good resource we have there. Okay, go ahead. I just want to point out, these are kind of some of the themes that I continue to get hit with is what is the focus of the local watershed councils? And like I said, our message has been that they are going to totally be unique and based on the needs of those local councils. The ability to go out and fund. So like this example with Jess Kirby with Summit County that she's gone out and, raised $4.5 million. That if I look at the other states, Colorado and Oregon, the ones we've been drawing from the most, Colorado's been doing these for 17 years. Oregon's been doing from 25. And so it's kind of interesting to see their cycle. They've gone through this. I'm actually going to skip ahead. So this is kind of an interesting thing coming up on April 26th. Dr. Sauter, he was one of the first guys that helped Oregon create watershed councils. And so he's about to retire. So what he's going to do is a presentation to all the watershed councils in Oregon about life cycle of watershed councils. And so it's an hour and a half long presentation. He and I have a meeting set up where I'm going to ask him if he'd be interested in talking with this group, maybe being available to answer questions but the thought is also we can post this on the website and let people know. This is also going to be recorded so anybody can watch it at any time. But this is probably pretty apropos that this guy who's a guru and this is going to give a presentation about the life cycle of watershed councils. But okay. That is Utah time, correct? It's actually, 3 o'clock to 4:30 Pacific time. So I switched to TAR time. Go ahead, back. So just kind of the common themes is focus, the ability to fund the existing organizations that are already there, and how do we integrate and work with them and not have people feel threatened or feel like we're going to replace what they're doing or whatever. The strong desire that the councils are more than just another meeting. Like Scott was saying, that need to do something, and that the councils that we help them stand the test of time, and then also their size and that scalability. But just so you know, these are the things if I get pinged on daily. So, all right, that's all I have. Corey.
Go ahead, Peter, please.
Now I will say something. I won't sing. Just wanted to clarify the state council's role with the local councils just briefly. You want to pull up? I don't know if it's worth. Go ahead and pull it up. I've got the stop sharing. And then if you look at the docs, see it's the.
I would have to go. Well, I didn't ever have it.
Okay. It's the,
Okay, so while they're doing that, since I'm working for you all, I would love to know if you have any thoughts or advice on those councils, things you would like to do, how you would like to be involved, or any thoughts or ideas on that.
I have a question, and maybe that's what we're coming to, but can we talk a little bit about what the certification process is and what that's supposed to mean?
yes. Yes, we can. So I want to highlight parts here in the act that pertain to the local councils. If you look there at line 168 is you facilitate the establishment by certifying them, and that's done after reviewing the proceedings and documents submitted by the local councils to make sure they meet the certification requirements. We'll get to those in a sec. So that's role number one with local watershed councils: certify. Number two, provide resources and support for the administration of the local councils. Now, I will point out that it very explicitly says in the act that the division staffs the state council. It does not specifically say that the division staffs the local council. So what that means to provide resources and support for administration, maybe it means the same thing, maybe it means something else. Either way, that's the council's responsibility. Number three, consult and seek guidance from local councils. And those are the three things there in the state council's duties that apply to the local councils. So if you look at the certification language down in the next section, so it says may be certified by the state council. So there's no mandatory, you check this box, you will be certified. So it's a discretionary function of the state council. If they're organizing documents and policies, so they basically do the application, right? Provide for an open and equitable system of governance and encourage participation of a diverse group of stakeholders. And that their organizational documents, there's that stuff about action by majority of the members, not of the quorum, and that in a balance appropriate for the watershed has that makeup of that list that Dan talks about. So those are the criteria for the approval. So that is how, what exactly that looks like. I think there's, I'd say personally speaking, I think there's a fair amount of discretion for the state council, especially where it says may. So.
Okay, any other questions or guidance?
I guess Dan was asking for some feedback, some guidance. I guess at a bare minimum, it'd be great just to kind of hear your progress at every one of our meetings, just kind of how things are going with these groups you're meeting with, pursuant to kind of that goal of certification. Certification, kind of in a broad sense, to me sounds like just getting these guys communicating with each other and having a broad representation there. People working towards a common goal of working together to, yeah.
Chair, can I make one comment?
Please.
So I think, honestly, it seems like that the local councils might have a little bit more meat on the bone of their kind of documents than we might. And to the extent that you're able to work with them, to me, the biggest issue is going to be encouraging basin-wide communication. And so I think for them, for most of them at least, it's going to be really important that they have electronic meetings, that they focus on how are they going to make that accessible. That would be my observation.
Yep, sounds good. Warren also had a hand up there.
Go ahead, Warren.
Thank you, Corey. Dan, would it be worth talking about the need to coordinate with other efforts going on within within water resources under the water resources umbrella? And I'm thinking specifically, I picked up on the fact that the Agricultural Water Optimization Task Force had a recommendation that they develop river basin councils to help implement ag water optimization. And I talked with Jeff Denblacker and said could have coordinate with Dan, because there's no reason to create yet another duplicate watershed council sort of thing. Couldn't these be done through local watershed councils? So I think my point is there's an example of how these efforts could be synergistic and some coordination that could occur under the water resources umbrella. But it might also behoove this group to look for opportunities like that, where resources could be combined and some synergies developed that help further the effort of setting up these local councils, as well as other programs that are going on, that are ongoing. Thank you.
I lovingly refer to Warren as Yenta, the matchmaker, because he's at the Water Users Conference. He was setting me up left and right. But I think you're right, Warren. I think the other thing too is looking for those low-hanging fruit, those wins that these councils can have, where they can get together, convene, but get right out and get going on something together. And I think combining with the existing groups and individuals already doing things is a great way to do that. And there's tons of good examples out there to draw from. Just water quality folks alone and all the things they're doing, tons of great connections there.
I guess along those same lines, that's our next agenda item, our council discussion topics. And that was going to be one of my recommendations, would be to maybe bring before this group a discussion of statewide processes and efforts that are already taking place. There's the Water Restoration Initiative that's been very successful. We've got a lot of things within Kim's shop that are taking place. The NRCS is doing great things. A lot of those things are already kind of tied together. A lot of our federal agencies have good things going on. I met this past week with the Salinity Control Forum. There's just a lot of things that are out there. I think that we could overwhelm our meetings if we try to do everything, but I wondered about trying to pull some examples of those, maybe some little things into each of our meetings, or I don't know what thoughts are. Kim?
Yeah, I would volunteer DEQ coming first. I think there's a lot of good work that we could kind of kick it off with. So I'd be happy to, at the next meeting, have one of our staff members present, if that's okay.
That'd be great. Would love that. So we'll follow up with that, and maybe even something else. At our next meeting, we'll also ask an update from Dan, and any other things for our next meeting that we'd like to pencil in, or suggestions. Todd?
Yeah, as far as the timing or scheduling those, we have reserved this room the second Thursday of July and October for the same time period, 12 to 4 total, but we'd plan on 1 to 3 probably. If you'd like to consider those dates, this space would be available, and we've reserved it with the AV team to provide support as they have this meeting and the last meeting.
Can you throw out those specific dates?
July 14th and October 13th. And I would suggest 1 to 3 again, both of those times.
October
13th and July 14th.
Can we go ahead and plan on those dates? Can I suggest a motion to accept those dates for our 2 meeting dates for the remainder of this year?
Yeah, also move that we meet on July 14th and October 13th for the remainder of this year.
Second, please. Okay, we got a second from Mark. All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, and we'll work to send those out. Yeah, Dan?
For a future council topic was House Bill 410, the watershed enhancements. she had offered that up as an idea.
Okay, that'd be great.
Okay.
Perfect. Between you and Todd, we got it covered. All right. Anything else? Warren?
Yes, I did. Thank you. You give me one more shot today?
Just one more?
Just one more. All right. Make it good. The reason I'd hoped to talk to the council today, I'm sorry, but this is kind of a big item. If you look at the awareness of the legislature on water issues this year, those of us that have been involved, as everyone here has been for a number of years, and many sitting through many legislative general sessions, water finally found its the needed place in the spotlight, I think, which is that the good news is water found its needed place in the spotlight. The bad news is water found its needed place in the spotlight. And yesterday there was a continuing legal education event, a virtual event, where several of the legislators spoke, just reporting things that have been done in the legislature this year. And about the last 20 minutes of that hour devolved to water issues, which I found to be quite interesting. And I asked one of the, I raised the question of how is the legislature, or how is the state going to coordinate all of these bills that come in, just kind of piecemeal into the picture through the legislative session. And I typed the question into the the virtual, the same format we're using here today. Would the Watersheds Council created by the legislature in 2020 be a good place to coordinate those multiple issues that come into the legislature, so that there's some to look for synergies and look for conflicts and so on, and basically just act as a clearinghouse? Would the State Watersheds Council be a good place to do that? I waited to see if any of the lawyer legislators who were doing the presentations there picked up on that, and Representative Brammer did. And he said, yes, that would be a very good place for these things to be coordinated. He said, what I think you'll need to be aware, though, is the legislature needs that sort of thing, but you're going to have to be able to respond quickly and be very responsive and active during the course of the session. So I don't want Dr. Steve to duck and dodge and think that the Water Task Force is being let off the hook. But the Executive Water Task Force doesn't have the legislative mandate that this group does to coordinate or to advise the legislature. So I'm just raising the question for consideration by the members of the council of whether this council becomes the point at which some of those wide range of issues could be coordinated for the benefit of the legislature and frankly for the benefit of the state of Utah. There.
I beat Brian to the microphone, so I get to go first. Warren, I really appreciate that. And I think this requires more discussion, further discussion. And I would propose that this be an agenda item at a future meeting. We have a little bit of time. We're going to get through interim, of course, but maybe even July or October, if anyone's, there you go, Brian.
I was just going to comment how offended I am, Warren, that you accuse me of ducking and dodging. I'm offended by that.
Maybe I'm suggesting you should try more of that, Brian.
I would just say this. I think that the task force has its place, but ultimately could work very much in concert with this group. And honestly, the more the merrier in the water world. There's going to be more work than any of us can do. So it'll be good. Thanks.
Thank you. This council wasn't intended to be a policy board to make policy, but we certainly have an opportunity to coordinate and pull things together and do some things. But let's put that on the agenda and we can discuss that further. So we'll look at some agenda items as we've discussed and plan on meeting together July 14th, same bat time, same bat location.
One parliamentary inquiry. Do we have to take public comments because we noticed it up?
I think that we should look for an opportunity. If there's anybody from the audience that would like to say anything, please.
I'm Claudia Cobb. Want me to do mine?
Yeah, please.
You'll be sorry. Thank you. I'm Claudia Cottle with Bear Lake Watch, and I only got in the end of the task force meeting. So you made Bear River area sound really easy. No, we've got Idaho, we've got Wyoming, we've got lots of things to deal with, and Bear Lake being part of that. And just to preface, our organization's been very busy in bringing all these people together in parts. And so I have requested to be on this call with Candice and Dawn, and it's very complicated, but we do a lot already. And I just jotted down 2 notes of about 3 areas I think we don't have really in our group right now that I think we can do, but appreciate the magnitude of the work you're trying to do. And yeah, it's not that easy. So, but we really want to be part. We think these can be beneficial, trying to figure out how we all fit in and what we're really trying to do, between water quality and water quantity but the more we talk, the more we try to put all the pieces together, the better off we'll be. So appreciate watching you all work today and be hanging around. So thank you.
Chair, I have one question for her. So did you come down today from Bear Lake?
Yes, I did.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I just want to say thanks for being here and talking.
Sure. No, we've been trying to watch this from listening to Margaret Dayton. Thank you. He knows I can't remember anything. But watching this from the beginning and some kibitzing among the group. And anyway, this state's come a long way this year, and we just want to make sure Bear Lake gets into all that good groovy stuff. So yeah, we got money. I know.
Thanks again for your attendance and for your comments. And I think we'd be fooling ourselves and each other if we said that this is where all the heavy lifting takes place. It's people like you on the ground. That's where the good things are happening. We appreciate that. Anybody else in the audience?
No, but were there any comments online?
Okay.
This is a good example why I like Watersheds Council. There's a lot of good leadership there.
Yeah.
We've been doing it a long time too.
Anything online, Allison? Nothing obvious. Okay, I'd accept a motion to conclude. Right.
I'd like to second Dr. Steve.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll move. Thanks, Victor.
All right. Thank you, everybody.